Ed,
Nora, are you
we're ready, go ahead.
ready? Okay. Announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and that it is being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Sorry if I blocked the flag.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this meeting is open to the general public. Are there any members of the public who have any items that are not on our agenda tonight that they would wish to bring to this board? Hearing and seeing none. Nora, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Barbario.
Here.
Mr. Dedich.
Here.
Councilman DiPiero.
Here.
Mr. Meth.
Present.
Mr. Napolitano.
Here.
Mr. Stanzio. Ms. Veely. Here. Chairman Dinsmore.
Here.
We also have with us our board planner, Mr. Weiser,
I am here.
our board engineer, Mr. Canjiano, and our board attorney, Mr. Lagana.
Very good. All right, we have some resolutions here for, from the minor subcommittee, was that? 1719 Route 10 LLC, the minor site plan for courtyard improvements. Who's here that could vote on that?
Dedich, Veely, Dinsmore.
Oh, good. Do I hear a motion approving the, resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Nori, would you call the roll, please?
Dedich,
Yes.
Veely, Dinsmore.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now we move on to other resolutions. We've got application number 21:514, Medham Corporation. We have a list here of who can vote on that. Do I have a motion approving that
So moved.
resolution? So
Second that.
moved. If you could call the roll, please.
Dedich.
Yes.
Napolitano.
Yes.
Veely. Yes. Dinsmore.
Yes. All right, and finally,
Mr. Chairman, this one was not prepared for this evening. It could be pulled from the agenda. No, that
Okay.
one was correct. 7 Enton Road was not prepared.
Okay.
that's good. Or not so good, but we can pass on that. We'll have that at the next meeting. That leads us to the primary item on tonight's agenda. Application number 21:517, Onyx Equities, 2 Hilton Court, Block 202, Lot 3.10. Preliminary and final major site plan, and a major soil moving permit to construct a warehouse facility.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Stephen Tombolakian from Leader Logan of Parsippany on behalf of the applicant, 2 Hilton Court LLC, which is Onyx Equities, the owner. So we're here tonight to present to you the preserved site plan for a brand new building in Parsippany, take the place of the existing office building at 2 Hilton Court. We're going to take down the existing improvements and look for something entirely. You're going to hear quite a bit this evening from all the areas that we have. The owners here to introduce themselves to the town. This is going to be the first appearance of Onyx Equities before the planning board. They've been before the zoning board for some minor things, but this is the first real application they have in Parsippany. Then after the owner, which is Matt Flapp, you're going to hear from the DeBarbieris, the architects, father and son team that designed that beautiful building. After the DeBarbieris, you're going to hear from Franz Leckie, our engineer, who designed the site. Then Joe Steiger, our traffic engineer, is going to testify about traffic impact, circulation, safety, those types of things. Last but not least, we have John Mcdonough. So I don't know if he's here yet, but he's our planner, just to kind of talk about the planning rationales of replacing the existing office with a new closed warehouse. So unless the board has any questions for me, I'd like to start by having Matt Flapp, Vice President of Onyx Equities, come in and kind of introduce who he is, who the company is, what their investments in Parsippany, and what they're proposing.
Well, we have a number of checklist items that we usually like to go through first. I'm going to turn to our planner. and he's going to walk through the list that you should have a copy of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a letter we, being new to the board, did not do this review. I have a letter here dated September 16th, 2021 from BFJ Planning, which did include a completeness review. And I will start, not a lot of items here, I'll start on page 1, item 12. The site is fully developed. There's no wetlands indicated. However, the site does show riparian areas. The consultant requested that there be testimony put on the record regarding the riparian areas. Item number 16, the second item in the chart, talks about Highlands exemption determination. Their initial review was that the area was exempt from Highlands, and they recommended a waiver of this item. Subsequently, they have submitted, BFJ has submitted an additional report indicating that that determination was in error. The applicant has submitted a full Highlands report indicating consistency with that it's consistent. However, they do have a number of conditions as part of their report, which is December 9th. So the applicant, we believe, should go through those issues. Next, the third item is item 26, proposed use. There's no identified end user. Testimony is requested on what might be typical employment, truck traffic, et cetera, based on the applicant's experience with comparable sized buildings. An environmental assessment, again, the site is fully developed. There are no environmental features present, so a waiver is recommended. Moving on to the next page, these two are the same. These are essentially comments predicated on separate preliminary and final applications. This is a combined application so that these will be dealt with as one item. So as listed as separate items, a waiver is recommended.
Right, do I hear a motion approving the waivers?
Motion, Matt.
I hear a second?
Second.
If you call the roll, please, Nora?
Barbario.
Yes.
Didich.
Yes.
DePiero.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Napolitano.
Yes.
Beely.
Yes.
Dinsmore.
Yes. All right, so we've gone through the checklist items. If you want to start your case, counsel?
Mr. Chairman? This is Matt Black of On Executive Director.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address, name and professional address for the record, please, and please spell your last.
Matthew Flath, F as in Frank, L-A-T-H. The professional address,
Yes.
1 Gateway Center, Newark, New Jersey, Suite 2400.
Counsel, you can go ahead and...
Can I take it off for?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're the chairman.
Thank you.
I'm only the mayor. Sorry, Tom.
All right, thank you, Matt. Okay, now, as I said, Onyx Equities is new in town. You've made quite a bit of an investment in the town. Why don't you give the board an overview of who Onyx Equities is and just the scope of the investment you've made in Parsippany Town?
Sure. So, good evening, members of the board. My name is Matt Flath. I am Vice President of Asset Management with Onyx Equities. Onyx Equities was founded in 2004 by co-founding principals John Saraceno and John Schultz. We currently own approximately 10 million square feet of commercial space within about a 2.5-hour drive of New York City, mostly in New Jersey. Our main headquarters is in Woodbridge, and the office that I sit in is in the Gateway Center in Newark. We specialize in buying well-positioned commercial real estate that for one reason or another has either been just not properly maintained by previous owners or is in need of some physical improvements. We own all asset classes in the commercial space: office, industrial, retail, multifamily. Most of our portfolio is office. And our industrial portfolio has been growing over the past few years. And as just stated, we did acquire the campus formerly owned by Mack recently. It's about 8 buildings, about 1.3 million square feet, of which about 60% is occupied. And our goal with the redevelopment of 2 Hilton is to help clean up the inventory, right? We have a lot of leasing that we need to do across the office portfolio that we bought in Parsippany. I think there's a lot of high-quality assets within that portfolio, and space will certainly lease as we continue to invest in some of the other office buildings within town. But we've identified 2 Hilton as a prime candidate for redevelopment to help lower the supply and therefore increase the attractiveness of the remaining office buildings in town.
Now, Matt, it's true that you do not have an end user for the future warehouse at 2 Hilton, correct?
We do not.
Okay, but can you kind of give the board an idea about the type of user you're looking at that's interested in occupying this space?
Sure. So there'll be a broad range of industrial tenants, whether light manufacturing, distribution, storage, warehousing, any of the standard industrial uses.
Okay, great. And do you have any, you have brokers, are the brokers, as soon as we get hopefully an approval from this board, you have brokers lined up to market that space?
We do. We have many broker relationships in the industrial sector, and it's such a hot market right now that you really don't want to take a property out to market until you have it approved. So we haven't actually begun marketing it yet, but if we do receive approval, then we would begin immediately.
Great. And in addition to replacing 2 Hilton, do you have plans to invest in the existing former Mack office buildings to kind of bring them back up to top notch and get them all fully leased up?
We do. So that's what Onyx does. We buy office industrial retail that is in need of some renovations, and the remaining buildings, other than 2 Hilton, will all receive substantial capital improvements, whether it's various upgrades from cafeterias to lobbies to elevators. We go in and do a full capital improvement plan to make them as attractive and leasable as possible.
Great. I have no further questions for Matt. Again, he was here just really to introduce himself to the town, because this is Onyx Equity's first real project. Again, we have a whole bunch of experts that are going to come follow Matt, but he's here this evening. He can answer any questions concerning Onyx, their proposals, what their intentions are. So, unless the board has any questions for Mr. Flatt.
Any members of the board have questions of this testimony at this time? Mr. Math?
I might have missed this. So this building is intended to have multiple tenants?
Our goal would be to have a single tenant, but we have designed it so if in the event we are unable to find one single tenant, it could accommodate. I doubt we'd ever go beyond 2 tenants, just based on the demand for industrial space. It's normally in the 50,000 square foot range. Beyond that, then it just becomes too difficult to manage.
Okay.
So our preference is 1, maybe 2.
So it's not going to be a bunch of little starter units?
No.
Okay.
Very, very unlikely.
Okay.
Right. Any members of the board? Any members?
I just have a question.
Canjiano.
There was, the application and is a warehouse use. You had mentioned something about another use, like manufacturing.
I guess the question is, you mentioned that it's industrial space, but to the extent light manufacturing is a permitted use in the zone, is that something that you'd be interested in pursuing if you can't find a traditional warehouse?
So any industrial use that is permitted in the zone would be our goal. We're not seeking a use that's not permitted in the zone.
And, Michael?
I see all these docking stations. How big are the trucks that would be fit here? Tractor trailers or single box unit or what?
Councilman, we have a couple different engineers that will be addressing that about exactly how many trucks, where they're going to park, recharging stations and whatnot.
Okay.
All right.
Good evening, thanks. Is this the same Onyx company that donated for the fireworks for Parsippany last year? Is this the same company?
They are.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Is this the same Onyx Equities that donated to the fireworks in Parsippany last year?
Yes.
Thank you for doing that.
Good corporate zone.
Other members of the board? Do you have any?
I do not know.
All right,
Thank you,
Counselor?
Ken. Again, Mr. Flatt will be available all evening if there's any issues that come up. Thank you.
Thank you all for your consideration.
I do have, are there any members of the public who have any questions on this testimony at this time? Hearing and seeing none.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Matt. All right, my next witness it's a tag team operations following this on.
Jim DeBarbieri and Brian DeBarbieri, architects who
Okay.
designed this building. I'd like to have them both sworn in. Careful.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Names and addresses for the record, please.
James Barbieri, address is 97 Chestnut Street, Rutherford, New Jersey.
Brian DeBarbieri, 97 Chestnut Street, Rutherford, New Jersey.
Can you please spell your last name?
D-E, capital B-A-R-B-I-E-R-I.
Thank you very much.
Jim and Brian, since you guys both were, this is your design, this is your baby. Can you give the board a benefit of your qualifications and experience, so hopefully they'll accept you as experts in architecture this evening?
I can't get down two people speaking at once.
Okay, name is James Barbieri. I'm, got my, Bachelor's Architecture degree from the University of Notre Dame. I received my license in New Jersey in 1979. I have licenses in 10 other states, including the surrounding states of New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Delaware. Member of the American Institute of Architects and New Jersey Society of Architects, and I appeared before many boards, planning boards and boards of adjustments throughout the state. I appeared before this board, I believe in 2015 for the expansion to the ShopRite on Route 46.
Brian?
My name is Brian DeBarbieri, and I'm a licensed architect and partner at the firm DeBarbieri Architects, located in Rutherford. I received my Bachelor of Architecture degree from Virginia Tech in 2012 and became licensed in the state of New Jersey in 2017 and licensed in the state of New York in 2020. Throughout my years working in the field, I've gained significant experience in the design of warehouse buildings such as this throughout the state of New Jersey.
Unless the board has any questions, we would ask that both father and son be qualified as experts in architecture so they can present their design tonight.
Any questions by the board?
What's going on with Notre Dame's football team?
Next year they'll be better. That's what they always say.
I'm a Notre Dame fan, that's why.
No more Brian Kelly.
Did you swear them in?
I did swear them in.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, mainly Brian will be helping me with the boards, and I'll be able to sit down here.
Jim, again, before you...
You need a microphone over there, please.
Before you reference any of the boards, let's make sure we mark them in.
Okay.
So the first one will be A1.
I also have some handouts, Brian, these may help. They're duplicates of the boards.
Council, are we gonna mark each of those separate?
Yeah, maybe we'll mark the handout as A1,
Okay.
and then the boards as A2 and A3.
Okay, so A1, we'll just,
It's just the handout of those.
hand out packet.
There should be nothing really new in the hand, it's really just a summary of what they.
It's already been submitted?
But I think it's easier to mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, which one do you want to call A2, the overhead?
Which one are you gonna do first, Jim? The aerial or the?
No, we're gonna do the floor plan first. That will be drawing A1.
And then which one of those is A3?
Brian will have to show you because they're not presently up there. They're behind.
Council, these are marked,
Oh, yeah, I think we're gonna be marking other ones before we get to these ones.
yeah, these are A1, A2, and A3 already.
They're already pre-marked?
Yeah,
Okay, so why don't we go with that then?
okay.
Let's watch you for the record, identify, in the handout, the board members just saw, identify what's included that's been pre-marked as A1, A2, and then we'll get to these.
Okay, A1 is a duplicate. It's the floor plan of the building. This is the same plan that was submitted to the planning board for the review. Drawing A2 are the exterior elevations of the building. Again, this is the same plan that was submitted to the planning board for review. It has some color on it, not exactly the color of the building. It's a little off, but that's the only difference. Now, A3 is one that was prepared especially for tonight, because in the engineer's report, they had asked that we talk about the roof plan for the building. And the last rendering is the same as the board that you'll be seeing tonight. Perspective rendering colorized.
So, council, A4 would be, I move the sheet. A4 would be the,
Why don't you mark, let's mark this elevation as A4. Exactly what's in the packet.
why don't we call it colorized exterior, colorized elevation? And then we could call the other one A5, and we'll call that site aerial.
Okay.
What are we calling A5?
Site aerial.
The area, okay.
This is A4, A5. Then we'll mark those. That's it. That's how we'll do that. And Brian, when are we gonna mark that last one? Is that similar to the floor plan that they pointed out?
Yes, this is a same,
Drawing A1.
plan as the
Okay.
plan you have, A1.
Okay. So Jim, since we have so many exhibits floating, when you are gonna refer to a specific exhibit, please let the board know so they can go this. Thank you.
Okay. So, I'm gonna I wanna orient the board to where this building is and where it'll sit on the site, and I'm gonna use, this site plan here that's colorized.
That's A5.
That was actually prepared by the site engineer, but just wanna get everybody oriented. So that shows the floor plan of the proposed warehouse. North, we're gonna call top of the sheet. Of course, then that's west would be left side of the sheet, east would be right, and the bottom of the sheet is south. Hilton Court is on the north side, and Brian, can you show where the entrance to this building would be?
Would you please speak into the mic? Thank
Okay.
you.
Here's the entrance.
Yeah, so the entrance would be to the building on that side, and that's where our front elevation will be, that I'll show you later. We have all the parking right in front of the building along that front entrance. To the west, you'll see a small area where we have loading spaces. And to the south, there's another area where we have loading spaces. Okay, so if we go back and start with our exhibit A1, it's oriented generally the same direction. The top of the sheet is the front elevation that you'll see as you come into the building. You'll see to the right, we have a gray shaded area. That's where there'll be administrative offices for this building. And the loading areas will be on the west side and south side. So the size of the building has a 108,000 square foot footprint. Of that, there'll be 5,400 square foot of administrative offices. That'll be on 2 levels. So we'll have a total gross floor area of 113,400 square feet. The larger loading area has 15 loading bays. That's the one on the south side, and the west side has 7 truck loading bays. Okay, Brian, let's go to drawing A2. Okay, again, in your package, that's the second sheet. This is exactly the same as what was submitted to the planning board, but there's been some color added. The top elevation is the front elevation that you'd see off of Hilton Court as you enter the building. And I do want to just say a few things about this warehouse. This is not a typical warehouse like you might think of, you know, an old concrete block warehouse with a couple doors and loading areas. This is, the market is asking for state-of-the-art warehouses. That's where the demand is. And I think you've seen some of them going up in the area. They are looking for high-tech facilities. They're looking for a corporate image. They're looking, because these warehouses have to have state-of-the-art product handling and efficiencies and abilities to move product in and out. That's where the market is in New Jersey right now. And of course, that's because of things like Amazon that get you the packages the next day. They have to move product in and out. So the top elevation, we have the offices over on, I guess that's the east side of the property, east side of the elevation. And to present a corporate image, we have 2 stories of a glass curtain wall, canopy. There's no sign shown on this elevation, but it would be over in that area for this building.
And once the future tenant takes the space, it'll be the responsibility of that tenant to come and obtain its sign approval?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And to break up the length of the building, we added some texture to the building, different finishes, different colors. Again, that's a difference from the old warehouses you're probably familiar with. We're adding a brick pattern texture on the left side with an accent band. You'll also see there's windows there for 2 stories of administrative offices. We're breaking that up with a darker precast concrete panel with score lines and horizontal accent in the middle. We're continuing and with the brick pattern to the right of that with the accent band. Now, it was mentioned that we might subdivide this building, and if we do, that second entrance would be in that brick area. Again, it would be a 2-story glass curtain wall at that entrance to present a similar feature as is on the east left side of the building. And the balance of the building, small area, is precast concrete panel in a concrete color, either tan or gray, with score lines and a sandblast finish. The elevation below it is the east end of this warehouse. You'll see that the office area wraps around the corner, and the majority of, or the balance of the building is the sandblast precast concrete panels with score lines. You'll see on these elevations that there are high windows. What we're doing there is bringing natural light into these warehouses. They do help us with some of the energy efficiencies that I'll be talking about later, in that these windows, when it's a nice bright day, they'll be tied into sensors in the warehouse that will be able to shut down some of the lighting and make use of the harvested light from the exterior. The next elevation is the south elevation. That's where you can see the loading areas, I guess, on the east end of that. The finish here will be, again, the precast natural concrete color. You'll see the series of windows across there, the clear story windows. By clear story, I mean they're high up, they're higher up. Now, these loading docks that are used will have automatic levelers and dock seals. So the intent here and what the state of the art is that the trucks will back in and load and unload totally undercover. So there will be no exterior handling of product outside the building. That's the most efficient way to do it, and that's what these type of buildings are doing right now. And the last elevation is the west elevation, and you'll see that there's those same loading docks there. And again, it's the precast sandblast concrete panels with that are scored and accented. I also want to talk about the building construction. This building is totally non-combustible. It's a steel structural frame with concrete precast panels. The bays on this building are 54 by 50 foot column bays, steel bays, to minimize obstructions in the building. The height of the building is 42'8". And just for your information, Brian and I just went out there tonight and measured the existing building. And the existing building is actually higher than this building on the south side. The site does grade down. We got, about 50 feet on the high side and maybe about 40 feet on the side that faces Hilton Court. I'd like to go and talk about the exhibit I put in here, and Brian, can you pull that up too? It's probably a little easier to see on the 8.5 that I gave you, but that's a new plan that was not submitted to the board.
This is the roof plan?
This is the roof plan, yeah. There was a question, the engineer wanted to see a roof plan. And
What did you mark this by?
This is A3.
A3. Okay, this roof plan shows the extent of the large roof equipment that's on the roof. There will be some smaller plumbing vents and small exhaust fans for toilets and things, but this is the major equipment that's going to be on the roof. On the upper right, there are two AC handling units, HVAC, heat and air conditioning units for the administrative offices. The other three units shown to the left and at the lower portion are space heaters. They're very high efficient space heaters. There's only 3 needed. The size of the space heaters are 5 foot high, 10 feet long, 3.5 feet wide. The HVAC units for the office area are, again, about 5 feet high, 8 feet long, 6 feet wide. And it's basically the equipment that is on here. Now, we have located them at least 50 feet away from the perimeter, and the intent there is that they just won't be visible with the height of this building and their location away from the perimeter. And they aren't the highest equipment in the world at 5 feet, so we feel we don't need any screening or anything for these rooftop units. The other thing I wanted to mention, New Jersey, I guess over the summer, passed a law that all new buildings have to be designed to handle solar panels. And we have to do this with this one too. And this building is ideal for that. You can see all of the space that's available for solar panel that's unusual for any other type of building. Other energy efficiencies for this building are the warehouse. We have to do actual calculations to make sure this warehouse complies with the New Jersey Energy Code and also the U.S. Department of Energy. The concrete panels on the exterior, precast concrete panels, they have an inner layer of urethane insulation, a very high thermally resistant layer inside. It's not just a solid concrete panel that'll transmit the cold through. We get R ratings of about 20 on this. Now, an R rating is a rating of the resistance. As a comparison, a house might have an R13, so this will have a rating higher than average home with, fiberglass insulation. The roof also has a very high rating of about 5 inches of urethane insulation. And as I mentioned before, too, the clear-story windows also will bring some energy efficiencies with having us the ability to save some lighting electricity. And the final thing I want to talk about is the fire safety of buildings like this. There's actually a code written specifically for these type of buildings. The fire code requires certain things in a building of this type, and that is truck access around the entire building. You'll see the site plans later that show that we have access completely around the buildings. Something unusual that they require on buildings like this is we have to have fire department access doors around the entire perimeter. So you'll see from some of the elevations that we have a lot of doors. They're not all exit doors. They can be exit doors, but they're mostly to allow the fire department to get into this building in case there's an emergency. Of course, the fire department won't have access to this through Knox box keys and things like that to get into this building at any time. This type of building also has to have an upgraded fire protection sprinkler system. It's called Early Suppression Fast Response. Sometimes they call it FR. It quickly puts a lot of water at any fire event that would happen in this building. And we also need to have a complete automatic fire detection system with fire department panels and an alarm system in this building.
Thank you very much. Unless the board has questions for Mr. DeBarbier.
Members of the board have any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dedeek?
I actually have 3 questions, so let's start one at a time. So first of all, thank you and congratulations for installing EV stations. I think that's a great thing we're doing for the environment. I would highly recommend that we have 1 EV station for the handicap parking.
Oh, Mr. Dedeek, I believe, Franz, are you going to be covering EV? Yeah, Mr. Lackey's going to be covering
Yes,
EVs
part of
on that part of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so I'll hold that question. The other one is it's a very good roof. So any plans or thoughts around putting solar panels?
It will be structurally designed to take the panels. I don't think a final decision has been made on that. That would be, I guess, when we get to that point, it would be our desire to.
Okay.
But it's an economic decision that'll have to be made, not by me.
Okay. And the last question I have is more about, I heard like we may have 2 tenants, right? So if that happens, I'm finding it, so how would the office work then, right? I mean, the office on one side, so.
Brian, why don't you bring up the office plan again? And if you could show where that second entrance would be and how we would split the loading docks. So each tenant, maybe I'll get up for a second. As Brian explained, the second entrance for the offices would probably be over here. Yeah, if you recall, there's loading docks at this end. So if we split the building here, here, or here, this tenant would have those loading docks, and this tenant would still have these loading docks.
There would
So-
most likely be a demising wall, right along this column
Yeah.
line.
So that's why Mr. Flatt said before that, the desire is to have 1 tenant, but we could split it into 2, but not more than 2. Not more than 2 would work in this building.
So, but how would the office space work for the tenant on the other side?
There would be a second
Second
office.
office on the, okay.
Yeah, there would be a second office constructed in this area.
Okay.
With a new curtain wall.
A new
Correct,
glass
yeah.
curtain wall
New curtain
canopy,
wall would be-
and again, it works because if you remember the site plan, the parking extends all the way across the front of the building, so there would be ample, parking for that entrance also.
And I assume its own roof mechanicals.
Yes, that's a good point. I would have to add some roof mechanicals that aren't shown on here, so it would be possibly one or another two of the smaller HVAC units. That's a good point.
Other members, let me just start. Mr. Matt?
Sure. I've probably about three questions. First of all, you have 4 doors across the frontage, from what I can tell, right? For pedestrians, for people walking into the building. Is that correct? I'm looking at the elevation.
Those,
Department access doors?
yeah, those are
Oh,
the
those
five,
are-
yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah,
So all people enter through the office? That was my question.
yes, yeah.
Was there any reason for the number of loading docks that were chosen? Or is there any constraint on that? I'm just curious.
It's, I would say it's typical for a building of this size. We've designed several of this size, 100,000 square feet, and what do we have
You have
here? We have
22 loading
12
docks,
and
right?
7, we've had as little as 15, and as much as 20, more than 20.
I thought it was 15 and 7, so 22.
We had 15, yeah, we have 15 and 7, so.
Okay.
yeah.
And those are designed to accommodate 53-foot trailers, I take it?
Yes, total length, probably about 65 feet with and the trailer.
Okay. Other sites you designed, I noticed this site, you can't circulate around the entire building, which means that some of the loading docks, trucks have to back in blindside. I'm just curious, the other sites you designed that are similar to this, do they have full circulation?
Again, we'll get.
I mean, that could
some
be saved for the site engineer?
Yeah, no, but at the same time, yeah, it is designed, and we'll talk about radiuses and movement here. So these trucks would come in here, and they would back in and then leave.
Okay.
And our engineer will explain.
Okay.
It's needed for that, and the same thing here, they come in back here and leave.
You're right, because that's a blindside back in that you showed from the first one, meaning that the truck driver can see great if he's backing on the driver's side. He's backing on the passenger side, as you showed it right there, which means he has a lot of blind spots.
Yeah.
All right. And I guess my last question has to do with the height. So the 42 feet, 8 inches, that's to the floor height?
From the floor to the roof, yeah.
Maybe this is a question for the site engineer, but do you know what the average grade plane is for when we measure our height against ordinance?
Well, I believe at the loading dock area, there'd be another 4 feet on there. That's at the lower side, so that would be 40, what is that, 46.8? So up against the building, I think it would be, the average would be the difference between 42.8 and 46.8. So we'll get further testimony on that. But
I guess our ordinance defines the grade plane, I believe, Andrew, is it 6 feet outside the building?
Yeah, they have a calc
Okay.
on it, every engineer.
Okay. I guess my question is, I just wanted to make sure there's not a height variance, because 45 is the height limit of the zone, right? Okay.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, all right. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other members of the board have questions at this time? Mr. Napolitano?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned before at this state-of-the-art facility. Can you go over that again, what that means? What does it mean to be a state-of-the-art facility?
It's the ability to move product in and out of the building. It's not just the building itself, but it's what's inside with the racking and the ability to rack higher and the computerization of getting the product in and out of the building.
Okay, so not necessarily the aesthetic of the building, more or less just
Yeah, but
in and out.
I do want to tie into that, the safety of this building with the enhanced sprinkler systems plus the energy efficiency of the building.
Okay. All those things combined make it state of the art now. Okay. Thank you.
Other members of the board at this time? Any other questions? Our professionals,
Could
Mr.
you
Kenji,
provide
no.
some testimony? I know the site plans, there's no trash enclosures on the site, and it says that they're located inside the building, trash and recycling. Could you comment on the interior?
I believe the
trash?
site, The site engineer, I believe, will handle that.
But it's inside the building.
Do you have trash rooms inside the building, Jim?
Yeah, there will be, facilities like these generate a lot of cardboard, and that's usually baled inside the building, and a truck will back up to one of the docks and take that off. Again, we don't have a tenant right now, we don't know what they're gonna generate, but the ones I've been involved with, the big trash is cardboard.
And regular domestic trash should be handled.
We can keep it in the building, there may be a small dumpster outside. I don't recall, and maybe the site engineer can tell us if there's any space for those facilities outside.
All right, so we'll bring it up, but
Hate to leave that for you, Franz, but,
But Jim, to confirm that, any compacting, or cardboard compacting equipment would be interior to the building, not
yes,
outside?
yes, yeah, it just gets, in the weather and the rain, it has to stay inside before it's moved in and out.
Okay, Mr. Weiser, do you have?
Yes, just one question, sir. You were talking about the smaller units on the roof, and you indicated they were heat units?
Yeah, they were space heaters.
Space
yeah.
heaters. No air conditioning for the warehouse portion?
No. These units operate to throw some ventilation and circulating air in there, but no, there is no AC unless we get a very unusual tenant who wants to spend a ton of money air conditioning that huge warehouse. I'd be surprised. And I've done many warehouses, and not one is air conditioned. And recently, I'm talking about, not through the years.
So Jim, how would, on a 100-degree humid day, how would the building operate where the men aren't fainting inside there?
That unit on the roof does also ventilate air, so you do get some ventilation, but keep in mind too that these buildings, and I'm not saying that they wouldn't be, not also, they don't have a lot of people operating these facilities. It's not like it's an industrial area with tons of people working inside.
And the humidity on a high humid day wouldn't impact the product, whatever the product is?
Depends on the product, yeah.
Okay.
Again, we don't have a tenant, and, if it's tile or things like that, it really wouldn't hurt that.
A lot of tenants opt to put in the big fans in the warehouse too, to help circulate
Yeah.
the air in there.
That's all I have.
Okay, any other members of the board?
I have one more.
Mr.
Is that,
Napolitano?
I know this, can you describe how the offices would look then? Is that bathrooms in there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, typically there would be, yeah, that, everyone would come into the front. They would be basically administrative offices.
Is there air conditioning in there?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
no, maybe I didn't make it clear that the two units that are located and handle the office are actually HVAC units, heat, ventilation, and air conditioning units.
Any other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, Counselor?
Thank you very much.
Actually, I need to just, any members of the public have any questions on this testimony at this time? Hearing and seeing none now.
Thank you very much. Again, Jim and Brian will be here for the remainder of the evening, so if any architectural questions come up, they're ready willingly. Thanks,
Excellent.
Jim and Brian. My next witness is our site engineer, Franz Lackey, who I'm pleased to report his company is relocating to Parsippany. They found space right on Route 46, and so he's Parsippany's newest engineer.
Very good. Welcome to Parsippany.
Might be seeing me again soon for a minor site plan application, for us.
Why don't you can take your mask off if you're comfortable, and we're gonna swear you in and then we'll qualify you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and professional address for the record.
Franz Lackey, L-A-K-I, 12A Maple Avenue, Pine Brook, New Jersey. FGSI Consulting.
Okay, now why don't you give the board the benefit of your education and professional experience, so we qualify you as a professional engineer?
So I graduated from NJIT with my bachelor's and master's in civil engineering. I have a professional engineering license in New York, and Pennsylvania. I have appeared before numerous boards, planning and zoning boards across the state.
And you were responsible for designing this site?
Correct.
And pretty much you designed the entire site?
Yes.
Unless the board has any question, we'd ask that Mr. Leckie be considered a...
Any questions
qualified.
on his credentials? Hearing and seeing none.
Thank you, Chairman. All right, Franz, you heard a lot of the board's questions concerning EV chargers, the trash, but just keep those in the back of your head. Why don't you go through your site design, explaining, how everything's laid out, stormwater, circulation, whatnot, and then we'll get into the individual questions of the board member.
Okay, perfect. I will be referring mostly to Exhibit A5, the colored site plan, which is same site plan you guys have seen, except for we added the landscape into it and colorized it to give it a little bit more substance to it. So as you know, this is within the office campus and off of Route 10. We have the Hilton to the northwest. We have 9 Campus Drive, an office building to the east. There is currently an existing office building on this site. It is been vacant for at least the past 5 years, ever since Onyx has owned it. And we are proposing to demolish the building and put in this new industrial warehouse. Overall, we plan on the proposed layout increases the lot coverage by roughly 2.5%. The impervious coverage we are increasing, and that's largely because of the building. Although the overall usable square footage is less because it is only 1 story, it is just a larger building. We are reducing the motor vehicle coverage, which is what is producing the majority of your stormwater contaminants, would be your motor vehicle. So we are reducing that that aspect of it. It is a 108,000 square foot footprint with 2 levels of office, 5,400 square feet on either, on both levels. One's a mezzanine level, one is on the main floor. There are 15 loading docks in the rear, 17 loading docks on the...
7.
7, thank you. 7 loading docks on the side, some about 9 trailer storage on the other side. There are, although these may initially look like loading docks, they are not designed to be loading docks. As stated before, the overall building is slightly less in height than the original building here now, the office building, which has been vacant. On site, there is an existing stream. It's a man-made relocation of a stream. Back before the entire campus was built out, there used to be a stream that ran through the site, and then it discharges across the road. I believe this is Dryden Way over here. It discharges to wetlands on the other side of the road. And when this site was developed, that stream was relocated, and there's now a series of detention basins. You can see one of them here, and there's a series of ponds that scatter throughout the site and then eventually feed into this man-made stream, which comes through here. It goes into a pipe culvert, and then it exits, and it eventually discharges across the way to the wetlands. All of that drainage facility is existing. It's not part of this application. However, Because this is considered a man-made stream and it's open, it has a riparian zone, as regulated by NJDEP associated with it. And there is a flood hazard area. There's no known wetlands on the site, none visible. We are in the process of preparing a New Jersey DEP flood hazard area verification and individual permit to submit to DEP. So the construction of this facility, assuming that it is approved by Parsippany, would be pending approval also by New Jersey DEP. Our development stays within our proposed development stays within the existing development, so we are not extending further into the riparian zone. There are 2 levels of a riparian zone, and as long as we are outside of the inner 25 feet, we are permitted to leave that pavement in and we're going to be pulling out any existing pavement or any existing disturbances within 25 feet of the top of the bank, which is the riparian zone. We are proposing a series of porous asphalt in a fire lane that is at the rear of the building, as well as in the parking areas. This porous asphalt helps control the water, detain the water, slow it down so it doesn't impact any neighbors, as well as it cleans the water. This is part of New Jersey's and really across the country green infrastructure push. This is something that's sustainable and it's good for the environment rather than having traditional manufactured treatment devices that have filters that need to be replaced and then disposed of. So this facility is all treated and detained as a green infrastructure facility. We are proposing 3 electric vehicle stations. I understand that over the past few months, the governor has passed a electric vehicle push, a mandate to install electric vehicle ready stations in all new development. This site, we will actually be adding an additional electric vehicle station to this because this site underneath those rules requires 4 instead of the 3 that we are providing. Also, typically they're in tandem, so you'd have one charging station for every 2 spaces, so it just makes sense to add another one anyways.
I was going to ask you that, assuming that there's more demand for electric vehicles, will the infrastructure be there to allow an expansion of those EV-ready spaces in the future?
Yes, we can, it can be designed such that we can pull additional conduit and add more stations along the parking lot as needed. We have 4 ADA compliant spaces right outside the office part of the building. It was noted by one of the board members that it would be good to have an EV-ready station within the ADA spaces. We will look into that and try to accommodate that in one way or another. Between the charging station and it being ADA compliant, we may put in there's potential for us to put an additional ADA space across the drive aisle or something along that nature, and so we don't have the charging stations right in front of the main entrance of the building. We have proposed a decent amount of landscaping around the building for a warehouse. There's actually should be some in this island here as well. We plan on leaving as much of the existing landscaping as we can. We don't want to disturb and cut down trees that might be able to be saved. This entire swath, including some of the green in here, will all stay existing trees. We're kind of hiding some of the green because there's actually pavement here that we're eliminating and pulling out. We're putting in grass, there. There are multiple fire access doors spaced every 100 to 125 feet surrounding the building. There is fire access off of Hilton Court and get all the way around the building, around a fire access road, 26 feet wide, around the back of the building, and then they can continue and loop around the building back to Hilton Court. We also are planning on maintaining existing access to the Hilton and 9 Campus Drive, both of which will be chained off with a bollard and chain to prevent regular vehicular traffic, but it would be open for emergency vehicles as needed to access throughout the entire campus. We are proposing a lighting. It's a mixture of wall pack units, building mounted units around the entire perimeter of the building, as well as pole mounted lights around in the traffic islands and around the perimeter of the site in general. Those will not impede any light. There will be no light spillage onto the neighboring properties and none shining onto Route 10 or any of the adjacent roadways. This site is actually set down lower than Route 10, so as you're driving by, you see the building, but it doesn't look like it's 40 feet tall. It looks significantly smaller than that.
Franz, can you point out where the trash dumpsters are?
So, on most warehouses, the trash winds up being taken care of internal as well as within. There'll generally be some kind of trash compactor, recycling, and regular waste within one of the loading bays. It's really tenant specific, and if the tenant does require a trash enclosure, that would be, we would need to come back to the board or whatever regulations Parsippany imposes in order for that tenant to have their trash enclosure specifically outside. It'd be screened, all up to the Parsippany ordinances.
So as proposed, all trash, all recyclables inside?
It will be inside or within a loading dock container. Nothing, there's no dedicated trash storage or dumpster enclosure on site right now.
One question I have for you is, when you were laying the building out, when you were designing this a year ago, talk about how you designed it so that the trucks, and I know Joe Steiger's here and he can talk more about circulation and safety and whatnot. Can you decide how you laid the site out so that the trucks, the large warehouse delivery trucks, for lack of a better word, can access the site and pull into the loading bay?
Okay. So the trucks will access off of 2 Hilton Court. They can come around the building and they can back into any one of these bays, as well as come in and back into these bays as well. Mr. Meth had indicated that backing in will provide a blindsided reverse movement, which is something that will happen with this facility, but it's not uncommon across industrial facilities. There should be little to no pedestrian activity in the area, in the loading docks, as it is, so it's a more difficult maneuver for tractor trailers, but it's not something that they're not typically used to. The site is designed predominantly for WB67 trucks, which is the 53-foot trailers. And they will, in the end, it's also tenant specific, and WB67 is the biggest truck that you're going to have. There are some that might have smaller, more box trucks or 40-foot trailers, 35-foot trailers as well, instead of the larger trucks. There was a comment in a few of the letters that we have received about generators. Right now, there are no generators planned for the site. Again, if the tenant needs one, they'll come back, they'll request it, they'll get the proper approvals for it. In terms of signage, also, we plan on using the existing monument sign, which is in this location right off of 2 Hilton Court. There's a mulch flower bed area with an existing building signage. No plans to improve it, enlarge it, just to replace it with a tenant sign, a sign that makes sure it's designated as 2 Hilton Court, so everyone knows where they are. Any building mounted signage, again, the tenant will come back to Parsippany for the proper approvals.
Now, Franz, you had the occasion to accompany the Highlands personnel as they inspected the property a few months back, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you have a chance to review the Highlands consistency review letter that was conditionally approved this project?
Yeah, so in general, the Highlands were in favor of this project. They found that it was consistent with their master plan. I walked the site along with a member of Onyx with the Highlands. They had no issues with the proposed development. They liked what we were doing with the stormwater and the additional types of landscaping that we're putting in there. They had requested that the green ash, which is proposed on site, be replaced with a more native species and one that's not subject to disease. So they have also provided us with their native plant species, so we can select one that is appropriate for Morris County and the Highlands consistency as a whole.
So, Franz, have you had the opportunity to review Mr. Cangiano's review report?
I have.
Okay. Do you take any issues or exception to anything, any recommendations that Andrew put in his report?
No, I do not. My company has reached out to Mr. Cangiano and spoke about the project earlier today, and we have no issues with complying and working to hit satisfaction.
Similarly, have you had a chance to review the water, sewer, fire department, forester reports, and do you take any issues with any of the comments provided in any of the municipal review reports?
I do not take issue with any of those reports, and we will comply with them. One comment I do have on the water reports are, the report that we got from the water department stating that this building cannot be brought online until the Parsippany's fair share housing has been met. That we are not permitted, no new facility is permitted to produce more than 1,500 gallons per day, more than the existing use. That letter continues to state that the existing office building produces, this proposed use will produce significantly more than that 1,500 gallons per day. However, the office space over the past 5 years, which the water department has been looking back at the records, has next to no flow because it's been vacant. As designed, our calculations show that the office building, which has roughly 145,000 usable square feet in it, if it was fully occupied, it would have approximately 18,000 gallons per day domestic water demand. Under our calculations for this proposed warehouse, including the 10,000 plus 1,000 square feet of office and all the warehouse space, we're only looking about 4,000 gallons per day. So we're actually 14,000 gallons per day less than the fully built out office. So that may be taken into account, and we're actually reducing the water flow than if Onyx just came in here and said, hey, we've got a tenant for the entire building. This is better for your demand.
But you do recognize that
I
you're
do
going to deal with
recognize
the Parsippany Water Department and the court order, and it is
Correct.
what it is.
Yes, yes.
I have no further questions for Mr. Lott.
Members of the board have any questions on this witness at this time?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Didich?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you again for considering EV station for handicap parking. My only comment would be, if you plan to have another handicap parking on the other side, it may be more complex, or, you may have enough ramps and enough space, and you have to be van accessible and all that, right? It just become more cumbersome, I would think. I mean, I leave it designed to you. So if you do on this side of the building where the entrance is, it may be just easier. If you do on, for example, one option could be if you do on the leftmost handicap parking, then it could be common, one station common between the regular one and that one. Again, I leave it to you, but again, just a thought, yeah.
Correct, thank you.
Yep. Also, one more thing, how much is the space between the leftmost docking station on this side and, yeah?
This one down here?
Yeah, because just visually, right, I don't know how much space is there. Visually, I don't see if a truck will be able to go and back to the leftmost docking station.
So this right here is, it's about 30 to 35 feet, this hammerhead in here. This is for the larger trucks. It is a difficult maneuver. I've seen them do pretty crazy things with trucks, but it is the ideal spots are probably about 2 to 3 in from the end. These last ones may be turned into a ramp, which are easier to pull into. That could be where the
Trash
Sorry.
compactor.
Yes, thank you. It has been a very long day. The trash compactor would be, or if the tenant is using smaller trucks, that's where they'll be pulling into, that's what they'll be backing into, using all the spaces. And it's really up to demand. Our typical warehouse, I know this had come up before, we typically try to fit at least one loading dock per 5,000 square feet of building. If this was in a big rectangular site with no stream here, we had the space, we would have loading docks all the way across the back and not have anything on the side. This side entrance and the limited over here, and the fact that we don't have a full loop road around, it's fitting around the environmental constraints out here and trying to minimize the impacts.
Okay, other members of the board with questions? Mr. Matt?
I will. I was going to see if anybody else wanted to go first. You just mentioned the loop road. I guess my big question is, so, how it's not feasible to make that a complete loop road so that you don't have to have blindside backing, and maybe take out a couple of the loading docks just to allow a truck to be able to turn around there? I'm just curious.
Getting around this back can be tight for trucks, especially the banks on the along the man-made stream here can be a little steep. That's something that we can look into as potentially converting this into a complete loop road. We had designed it to keep the trucks, these two truck courts separate as much as we can, and just limit it to fire department access. But overall, we felt that it was better to keep this as just a fire department emergency access for now.
Okay, I mean, in some respects, it's your site. And I respect what you said about not an area where you expect pedestrians. I do find that that's where pedestrians are most at risk when they are there. And the truck drivers actually sometimes become pedestrians. So there are people that could be walking in the area. That's the main reason why I ask about the blindside backing. I guess, and Mr. Cangiano had a comment about truck turning templates. I'm really curious about that one island that's close to the interconnect with an adjoining property. But it looks...
This one here?
Yeah, I mean, that island looks like it potentially compromises maneuvering in and out of the, where you want trailer parking. Have you checked templates around that? I mean, does it have to be as big as it is?
This island, this island can be cut back more. And we can, and still abide by all of the, lot coverage requirements that we have. And this can be cut back. We were trying to, at the time of designing this, trying to reduce the impervious coverage. We were actually at one point trying to, get below the thresholds for the Highlands. However, that just wasn't feasible for this site. The trucks, they do fit in here. We have run turning templates, through this area. It gets to be a little tight if they're pulling out of here and coming this way, but coming the main route, we had found that was sufficient.
I see that. I was really more concerned about the accessing of the...
These ones?
Right. And I guess the interconnect between the properties is remaining?
Yes.
Okay.
Here and here. But we were planning on, here, the plans are showing for bollards and a chain on it. Based on some municipal comments and internal discussions, we had decided to do the same thing over here and leave it as emergency access.
Okay. I guess my last question is, would you be amenable to putting a sidewalk between the building and the street? I mean, the main reason is you're introducing trucks on the property, and trucks have a lot of blind spots. I worked in the 7 Campus Drive for about 8 years, and I was shocked at how many people walk around this area. There's actually people that take the bus and walk in frequently and around the area on Campus Drive, and you're right next to a hotel. I could easily see people wanting to go there for happy hour, afterwards. Would you be amenable to putting a sidewalk from the building to the street?
Okay, so we'd bring a sidewalk basically right around here and connect it, or either side. But I don't see why not.
Okay, and lastly, just curious, it's 4 ADA spots?
Yes.
I mean, it seems a little low for when you're over 100 parking spaces. Is that correct?
I'll have to double check to confirm, but
I thought it was like 1 for every 25 up to 100, and then every 50 after that. But I'll leave that to the professionals.
Yeah, we'll have to double check. I think it is 1 for, you may be 1 short, but we'll have to.
If we are 1 short, we will add additional ADA space.
Thank you.
Any other members?
I mean, I do second that, Matt's comment about having a loop road. I think that space the docking station I was talking about, the last one, it's very tight. If a truck is trying to back, and it gets stuck there, emergency vehicles will also not be able to go through there, right? So, I mean, the whole idea of that road will be lost there. So I do second that thought, the comment, Matt, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, did you have?
Yeah, I have, one question. With regards to, you said that you don't have a generator on the premises. Just to make you aware, I was mayor for 8 years prior to being mayor again. We had many, power outages. And just forewarning you, we're tree city, number 1. We do have a lot of trees and we do lose power at times due to these storms. And this is a recommendation, I think it would be beneficial for you to have a generator on the site. So we can use it for a charging station. No, I'm only kidding. Well, I'm just, when you said that, it just sparked me, because I know when I was, mayor prior, and then just recently, I saw some facilities that didn't have it, and they were out for like a week too, and then it becomes an issue. So that's up to you if you want to do that, but just giving you a forewarning.
Thank you. I know we all have recent memories, especially Sandy and some of the other times, and I was actually living in Parsippany. I grew up in Parsippany when you were first elected as well.
Oh.
So I grew up, I went to Parsippany Hills.
So did I. Good schools, isn't it?
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a few, just you can add a little more testimony. We had asked about the limits of the heavy-duty pavement. Where is the heavy-duty pavement going to be?
The heavy-duty pavement it's going to be everywhere except for within this parking area. We're gonna have the porous pavement, well, and the fire access, because that's porous as well. And this is just being a standard.
Just want to get that out, be updated.
Yep.
The turning templates, they're very important, emergency access, especially coming around the, access road behind there, make sure so we're gonna have to, I was hoping you would have those today, but you will submit them, and we'll have to make sure that they do it.
The answer is yes.
So-
I don't crop it.
Okay, moving along, Mr. Weiser, you had some,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in the BFJ September 16th, 2021 report on page 2, the item down at the very bottom, and then it goes on to the next page, talks about the front yard setback, and there seems to be some discrepancy as to whether a variance for the front yard setback is required. Can you address that?
Yes. I'm going to pull up.
Wow.
And again.
It's okay.
Some days. That's fine. All right, we're just gonna do it this way. So,
We just let the board know what you're looking at.
this is the site plan. It's what was submitted, nothing's changed, just an enlargement of it. So what we have is, I believe the planning memo was calling out a front yard setback that was dimensioned as 100.39. That dimension is actually the side yard, which is this one here. So the front yard would be along, we're considering it along Hilton Court. And the distance, the closest distance from the building to Hilton Court, which is this cul-de-sac here, is 175 feet.
Okay, so the planning memo is really referencing a side yard as opposed to the front yard?
In our interpretation, yes.
And can you point to where that side yard,
So
where the 100.39 is?
So the 100.39 is this dimension here, which is from the building corner to this lot line. This lot line abuts the Hilton, I don't remember the address. And then, so the front lot line that we are taking is along the front yard here, right along to Hilton Court, and then as it hits the Hilton property share and the adjacent property lines are side yards.
So that's a separate lot. Is that roadway property line an internal roadway, or is it a dedicated roadway, dedicated right-of-way?
This in here,
Yes.
this is a dedicated right-of-way.
And does it,
Here is not.
I apologize, I'm seeing this for the first time. So
Okay.
Does it extend all the way to where that,
It ends at the cul-de-sac, it actually continues.
okay, so while it would be the front of the building, it's not abutting a right-of-way, it's not a roadway frontage?
Correct.
Okay. In that case, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you know, if you wanted to be very, very conservative, you could require a variance for that. I'm not sure, given the nature of this, what was just described, whether it's really necessary. I would defer to you as the engineer, your planner, and council as to whether that they feel it's necessary.
You're talking about the frontage on a public right-of-way? Is that what you're talking about, or more of a setback issue?
Well, they're calling it a front yard setback. The question then becomes whether it's really a front yard, because it's not abutting a right-of-way. It may be the functional front of the building or the architectural front of the building, but it's not abutting a right-of-way because the right-of-way doesn't go through.
You're not considering the Hilton Court cul-de-sac as a right-of-way?
Well, but that's not where the encroachment is. The encroachment is further to the, I guess, south.
I don't think
Oh,
she
yeah,
visited the
there's no
site.
road there, you're right.
The zoning, I mean, as a zoning officer, I would review it as correct, as the 175. I don't think she visited the site. If she had, she would have seen that it's not, it doesn't have any frontage there. So as we wouldn't have reviewed that as, I would have said that that was the side too. I would have done the 175 feet.
Okay.
My guess is that she probably didn't get a chance to visit the site.
Okay, so that answers that question. The other question, and I don't know, or the other questions, there, when you look at, on the planning report, pardon me, on page 2, items 2, 3, and 4, they seem to call out some discrepancies between the various documents that you have submitted. I think that you have addressed most of them verbally. To the extent you haven't, if you could, in terms of what is the proper description against what the previous planner had put in their report. And then I would just ask you to make a condition of approval that the documents be brought into conformance with one another.
Perfectly acceptable.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple more questions to follow up on our earlier questions. One on the building height, the other on the trash, and there was something that came up on the architectural elevations that I think that I did not bring up in my letter. So starting with the trash, there's ample space to provide a location, a standard location because we don't want to have to get into condition of having to come back to the board to add a trash receptacle on site. So I think you should add a trash receptacle location, the concrete pad and screening, and ample size enough for the trash refuge from the office and the warehouse personnel, as well as recycling bottles, cans for personnel as well.
I have no issue with that.
Okay. And then, the building height, could you provide testimony on that? I'm sure you've measured it and checked it. Can you provide your testimony on what the building height is, how it was measured, and is it as proposed in compliance, or will it need a variance?
So we had calculated the building height, the average grade, 6 feet around the building, and it is, I had it in front of me.
Let Mr. Kinchiano know which sheet number on your plans it is, so you could review it.
So it is on G1. What we're providing, we don't have the building height exactly labeled on here, but the average grade that we had calculated out to be is 293.667, 293.7. So that's on G1. We have a table and a figure where all that is calculated from.
Can you talk about the building height in relation to the average grade plan and whether we're consistent with zoning requirements?
So the building height, overall height is, it was calculated, it's under 45 feet height, which is the maximum building height in here. You just have the 8.5 by 11 copy. So, all right, the architectural plans that which you guys have in front of you, I'm looking at A2. The west wall, actually, every one of these plans, I believe, has it. There is an average grade, typical, I'm looking specifically at elevation 4, the west wall. There is a dimension of 45 feet, about a third of the way from the left-hand side here. And that is based off the average grade, which they are also providing an average grade calculation where those numbers are coming from, which matches the average grade calculation we have on our sheet. So per the architectural plans, and this A2 exterior elevations, the average height of the building is 45 feet, which is in conformance with the ordinance of maximum height of 45 feet.
That calculation's to the building corners, right? Those are the four corners of the building?
The
elevation.
calculation is 6 feet off of
Oh, it is,
the
okay.
building, yes.
Yeah, because
yes.
on the architecturals, it seemed to be described almost as if they're the corners of the building.
So the architectural seems like that. However, I have a calculation on my grading plan, which breaks down each wall. It's 6 feet off. We have a little diagram for where each wall is coming from, and it does break it down. And I got 293.67, the same as what the architecture is showing on his plans.
And you made every effort to maintain consistency with the parts of the design requirements?
Correct.
In compliance is what you're saying, it does not need a variance? Is that-
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to get that on the record. Height, trash, there was a plan, TC1, talked about, temporary construction companies. Is there any kind of plan, operational phasing? What is the purpose of that plan? Is this building going to be built and phased and occupied in phases?
There is not. The TC1 plan was mainly put into place. It is one of the checklist items as a site plan checklist to have a temporary construction staging plan. I noticed in your letter you'd wanted to move some of the areas outside of the forced pavement, which we will.
I just wanted the clarification that we weren't intending on having a phased operation.
No.
And it opens up a whole other question of, line of questioning on the amount of parking and what. So,
No, not for this size of a building.
and then, the 9 trailer storage spaces to the north or to the west, whatever you call it, they back up. You had some concern about impervious coverage. They back right up. The pavement goes right up to the face of the wall of the building without any backup protection. I'm concerned that building will get dinged and nicked. Is there any reason why the pavement goes straight up to there and you don't have some kind of buffer or protection?
That was mainly just to maximize the space on that side of the building and provide adequate space for the trucks to back into it. By the time we start pulling far enough away from the building where that risk is mitigated, because the trailers do have different depths and where the rear axles are. Sometimes they're right at the back bumper, sometimes they're 10 feet in. So you got a truck backing up and then until they hit the wheels, hit the curb, you may already be too late. So we did not take that into account in providing that space.
So there's no protection from the truck backs up a couple feet too much into the building?
Not at this time.
And then the last question I had, this is more for should this board deem this application approved. There's discussion about bifurcating the building in separate tenants. Parking count is based on employees and number of managers and number of staff. I think this should just be a condition added. Should it be broken into multiple tenants, that would have to be, the parking count would need to be addressed for compliance.
So the parking count that we have established here, there's also a note in one of BFJ's letter, the one that you were referring to earlier about parking counts and not counting the office. So based on the way the ordinance is broken down for warehouses, it needs to include, I have the exact language here, but it needs to include one visitor space per 10 employee managers. It's one space for every 2 employees and such. It's a pretty complex parking calculation. So typically what we see for one of these warehouses is 1,000 square feet per one parking space per 1,000 square feet warehouse is more than sufficient. And so no matter how we devise this, you're going to wind up with approximately that same number of employees. If for some reason that becomes not enough for the tenants, they will have to provide some other means of parking whether it's on one of the adjacent parcels that Onyx owns with some van shuttle buses or something along that nature. We will make sure that the parking complies with the ordinance. When it comes to, back to the actual planning letter, taking into account office, really all the numbers that we had come up with takes into account the office employees. We can recalculate it and show the office employees with separated from our parking summary, and we will still be in conformance. We have 127 spaces, which is just about the right amount for this size of warehouse in our opinion.
As long as it complies when they come into zoning, that's the bottom line.
Mhm.
All right, any other members of the board, any of our
Yes, Mr.
professionals?
Chairman.
Mr. Napolitano.
Thank you. What's the timeframe of demolition to building completion?
For full construction on this,
Yeah.
I would estimate probably 9 months to a year.
All right. When does the demolition take place? What times of day?
It'll be likely 7:30 to 3:30 is a typical construction day. It depends on any ordinances that there might be within Parsippany regarding noise and that such a thing in terms of what kind of operations there are. I'm not part of the contractor, so I don't know the exact answer to your question.
Typically, this size warehouse has how many employees?
Really tenant driven. I figure on roughly 1 per 1,000 square feet, which is usually our parking calculation as well.
Okay. And when the project is complete, will there be more or less trees than there are there now?
I believe that there will be fewer trees than there are now.
All right, so will that affect any of the stormwater runoff onto Dryden Way or Route 10 or Seasons Restaurant, anything over there? Anything that'd be affected by the fact there'll be less trees?
No, everything drains into our site. We have, no, the entire site does not drain into ours. However, we have reduced the amount of runoff going out to the site, and actually, for the most part, all the stormwater runs through our site because it pipes out across Dryden Way. So all the other campuses eventually run through this site.
Okay.
To exit.
I mean, is that a stormwater pond there in that photo, top right?
This is, excuse me, can I just put this in as A6? This is an exhibit emergency access that I had put together.
Mark this as A6?
It's up top right.
A6. I just marked it.
All right, great.
This is an emergency access
So-
template,
Yeah,
and it's all 3 sheets are depicting the template? Or all 3 photos depicting the template?
yes, yeah.
So that stream you talked about before, does that come off of that? Stormwater
So
pond?
there's a detention basin here. You can kind of see a channel. So there's a outlet control structure. It channels, goes underneath the culvert, underneath the road, and discharges the head wall. That head wall is right here. That part is this.
Alright.
So, and this handles stormwater from
The other side.
mostly Hilton. I can't tell you exactly where. This site, just so, because Mr. Canjiano had alluded to it, we had put together emergency access, showing, aerial fire truck coming in, rounding the site, going back out. Same thing with coming into the site via both, emergency access, driveways. It shows that it can circulate the site without any, impediments.
Mr. Weiser, you had a...
Yeah, just to clarify one thing. So is it correct to say that Onyx owns the entire campus?
I don't believe so.
How much of the campus?
Can I ask Mr. Flapp to go back? They own a lot of it, not all.
Okay, Is there a graphic that you could show what is owned and what isn't?
Please.
We don't get a
We own 8 buildings within the campus. I don't know the exact number of total buildings within the campus, but it's more than 8. We don't own any of the adjacent buildings to this property, though. So none of the other buildings that we own are directly adjacent to this.
Okay, so it's fair to say, though, that there is enough real estate that you have control over, that if additional parking needs to be off-site, you would be able to make some kind of arrangement that the parking would be satisfied, and then there would be some kind of way to get the individuals to the building.
That is possible, but in my experience in industrial leasing, with the amount of parking we provided here, that's highly unlikely.
The answer is yes.
The answer, it would be possible, but I don't think we would need to.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions by members of the board or our professionals?
I have one comment, Mr. Chairman. You testified earlier that really there's no signage plan at this point except for the monument sign at the entrance.
Correct.
You will be submitting a sign plan for the building mounted sign?
I think once the tenant is leased up, it'll be the tenant's responsibility to come in and ask this board. If they want a conforming sign, great, but I believe they're going to have to come before this board for a sign approval.
Okay, so you're going to leave it to the tenant?
Yeah.
Are there any wayfinding signs proposed, especially since you have some emergency access only points and some potential for splitting of the building for 2 separate tenants?
Not at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I think maybe as a condition that a wayfinding sign plan be submitted, I think is appropriate for the way the site is proposed.
Yeah, we'll be more than happy to work with Mr. Canjiano to come up with a wayfinding plan.
Yeah, it's different than the building mounted sign, which is tenant specific. This is more site specific, especially given the emergency access.
That's right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none. All right, are there any members of the public that have any questions of this witness on this testimony at this time? Hearing and seeing none.
Thank you, Chairman.
Counselor?
Thank you, Franz. Okay. My next witness is Joseph Steiger, traffic engineer who's appeared before this board and its sister zoning board many times. So, swear you in, Jim?
Yeah. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Name and address for the record, please spell your last.
Joseph Steiger, Staigar, 17 Tremont Drive, East Hanover, New Jersey.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Joe, have you previously been sworn and qualified before this board?
Yes, I'd say the Board of Adjustment more times, but I have been before this board. Mr. Densmore particularly looks very familiar.
So why don't you give the board a brief overview of your education and credentials so they can qualify you as an expert?
Sure. Bachelor of Science, Master of Science degree, Civil Engineering, New Jersey Institute of Technology, and an adjunct professor of traffic engineering courses at NJIT. I have a professional engineer's license in the state of New Jersey, as well as other states in the Northeast, and a professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey. But I'll be testifying tonight as a traffic engineer if the board so accepts me.
And have you or your firm extensively studied the former McAllen business campus for pretty much all the projects they've done?
Pretty much all of them, yes.
So you've studied this part of Parsippany out, pretty much out the wazoo?
Yes.
Okay. That's right. We would ask that, Mr. Seth.
Any questions on this witness?
Did you complete your ethics hours? I'm sorry, no.
Is that an official term, wazoo?
Fine.
Thank you very much. Now, Joe, your firm prepared a traffic study. Now, I understand this is a permitted use, but given tradition in Parsippany, we always come in with a traffic impact study. Can you give the board an overview of your firm's findings? And then as well, answer some of the specific questions from Mr. Duff and Mr. Canjiano concerning the safety of the truck movement.
Yes. Prepared a traffic impact study, basically 3 parts to it. Evaluation of existing conditions, where we go out and take traffic counts and determine what the existing conditions are in the area, traffic control devices, take an inventory of what controls traffic in the area. Secondarily, we project how much traffic a development such as this would generate using standard trip generation rates. And then thirdly, assessing the impacts. And then thirdly, working hand in hand with the site engineer to make sure that we have a site that operates safely, efficiently, sufficient parking, and so forth. So we're in COVID. But as Mr. Tombolaki had pointed out, we have some experience in this area. So we do have some traffic counts that date to 2018, but we felt that that data was better than using current data and trying to find a COVID adjustment. So we took that 2018 counts, and then we bumped it up 1% per year to take into account a growth rate. The NJDOT has established growth rates for traffic volumes and from historic data. So we essence, we adjusted it to current volume conditions. And then additionally, we took an inventory of surrounding projects that have been approved by the township, and then but haven't been built yet, assuming that they will be built someday and generating traffic. So we incorporated that traffic. So we have existing conditions, we bumped it up by the growth rates, and then we have those other projects that we took into account and their traffic as well to establish what our base traffic volumes are. The other aspect that we looked at was how much traffic that this site will generate. First thing we looked at was what's comparing. Let's compare what it would generate using the same trip generation rates. Trip generation rates are from the ITE, which is the acronym for Institute of Transportation Engineers. It's the Bible traffic engineers use to determine future projects and how much traffic they generate. But the 186,000 square foot office would generate in the order of 200 trips per hour, mostly employee traffic and obviously mostly car traffic. But the proposed 113 warehouse square foot, 113,000 square foot warehouse would generate in the order of about 40 trips per hour. So about one-fifth, about 20% of what in the former use, the office use, would generate on this site. Albeit we will have some heavy vehicles, trucks, tractor trailers that will go in and out of this site. And again, based on the ITE information that we have, it'll be about 5 trips in the morning peak hour, 6 trips in the evening peak hour. So out of the 40 that will go in and out in the morning and the afternoon, about 5 to 6 of them will be trucks, such as tractor trailers. We assume tractor trailers in our analysis, and they most likely would be for this type of land use. So we took that traffic and we superimposed it at the surrounding intersections. Campus Drive and Dryden Way is our main access point to the site. Hilton Court is extension from that. That's the key intersection that our site would utilize to get in and out of the site. That currently operates at level service E or better. There's a table in our report that shows the different approaches to that intersection and the levels of service. And I'm sure the board has heard from traffic engineers talk about levels of service. We model the intersection by putting in the traffic timing, the cycle timing, the volumes, how many vehicles are turning left, through, right, and then we analyze that to calculate the average delay that each driver takes in actually each lane group. So if there's a left turn lane, we calculate that delay as well as the through movements, as well as the right turn movements. As in grade school, A is always the best situation and E is the worst. I'm sorry, F is the worst situation. We have an A through E at this intersection. It currently operates at A through E. And when we superimpose our additional traffic on top of that, it doesn't degrade the levels of service. It stays within that. Each lane group, each approach stays with the same level of service. There's no degradation. We increase it in the order of about 2 seconds for some of the approaches, but that's the limit of our impact. We didn't analyze it as an office, but if we had 200 trips per hour in and out of that intersection, it certainly would degrade it or increase the delays more than what the 40 trips do. So the point being is that we are operating at what would be considered acceptable levels of service, A through E. And the key there is that they stay at those same levels of service. And had it operated, well, we know it had operated, but if it operated again as an office building, would have more impact than our proposed development. We incorporated, as I said, in the analysis, we incorporated the heavy truck traffic as well. So that was part of the analysis, and still came up with minimal impact at that intersection. We also analyzed the intersection of the restaurant driveways, the new restaurants that are coming, and the same effect as well. We expect that the vast majority of our traffic will come to and from Route 10 through the Dryden Lane interchange, full interchange at that location. Our truck traffic will be oriented to 287, to and from 287. That brings you to Route 80, to 287 South, or the Amboy area, New Brunswick area. So that is going to be the main arterial that I believe that vast majority of traffic, particularly truck traffic, will utilize this site. So in terms of having an impact on township roadways, would be absolutely minimal, if not negligible, zero. Site plan, at this point, as Ron had mentioned, talked about the site, I believe operates safely and efficiently. Mr. Meth made a very good point about the backing up of trucks. It's always preferable, I'll use that term, to back up a truck in a clockwise direction, because the driver can see the corner of his rear of his truck as he backs up in that direction through his mirror. If he's turned the other way, he really has a blind spot and you can't see the back of that truck. You can't see where that truck is actually headed. Now, can truckers do it in a safe manner? These are professionals. They back up in all directions in their daily activities and driving the truck. So I always use the word preferable to do it in that clockwise direction. And we try to design each and every site, but I've never had a situation where the direction of that backing up of the truck orients how the site is developed. So I understand that the preferable direction should be a clockwise direction, but typically you do have a dock manager, you have the workers that are out there, you're going to have someone who's going to be watching what's going on. They're employees, they're people who work in a warehouse, they're accustomed to be around trucks as well. So slow speeds, otherwise good site visibility at these locations. We are cognizant of the situation, but we don't think it's going to be an unsafe condition and will operate adequately. Parking spaces, more than sufficient. While Ms. Lockheed had pointed out how the emergency vehicles would approach the site, we took a look at it with truck templates as well. But particularly, we looked at the intersection of Campus and Dryden to make sure that that maneuver can get to and from the site as well, from Dryden Lane all the way to Hilton Court. So we analyzed that path and found sufficiency of the roadway to accommodate the WB67s. WB67s are the extended cabs with the sleepers in the back of the driver's seat, and then the 53-foot trailer. They're the largest vehicles that are allowed on the New Jersey roads and most of the whole eastern seaboard coast part of the country. So we did utilize the absolute largest vehicle, found that to be adequate to circulate and approach the site and leave the site as well. So based on that, we feel that the site plan is designed properly and again, in a safe and efficient manner.
Thank you, Joe. I have no further questions for Mr. Stark.
Questions from members of the board? Mr. Councilman?
I just have a concern that these truckers, if they want to go east or west on Route 80, it's gonna be a lot easier for them to go up to 202, make a right turn, and get onto, instead of going down on Route 10.
Littleton Road?
Littleton Road, make the right turn to get to 80 east and west. And trucks that size, we don't have. Littleton Road has the church, the schools, school traffic, residential area, it's all residential. And I'm concerned about trucks going in that direction, which is gonna be a lot shorter path for them than going down to 287 on Route 10. Is there any way we can direct or force the traffic to go onto Route 10 and 287?
Well, I think you'd have to pass an ordinance, your township would have to pass an ordinance of some sort to no trucks making a right-hand turn or left-hand turn on the
Left-hand turn?
Short of that,
But
would you be fine with the operations of this site directing that trucks coming to and from the site will use Route 10 and not use Littleton Road?
That's what we can control, you know, make that a operational regulation, I'll call it, for the site.
Which is consistent with what the multifamily developments that were approved for McCallie along Campus Drive similarly agreed to that type of a condition?
Yes, yep, so we can do that, we can control our site for sure. And it becomes problematic, the township has that power to pass an ordinance of restricting truck traffic or turning movements as well.
I like your alternative
But we're not
better,
proposing that.
if you can enforce it.
Yeah, we're not gonna let it get to that, though, right, John?
Okay.
We won't have to.
All right, other members of the board have questions on this testimony at this time?
Just one more follow-up on the actual truck physical movements coming out of Hilton Court on campus, and then again, campus and Dryden. In your review, any issues with the wheel tracking and hitting existing curbs? Will the trucks be able to make that maneuver on both those streets?
Yes, we analyzed it with using auto turn program, as you're well aware of, Anthony, and analyzed it with that wheelbase 67. It stayed within the proper lanes, didn't cross double yellow lines or hop over curbs. It stayed within the appropriate turning path.
Just, Gordon?
One question, see, I think, I don't know if you said it, but you used 2018 volumes, correct? Or I think you did say it. Did you look at anything like streetlight data or anything to see what current traffic levels are at?
You know, my experience is that currently traffic volumes are lower than they were back in 2018 because of just the nature of, and we're still in this COVID pandemic. People are working out of their homes a lot more than they did two and a half years ago.
I concur with you with regard to this campus.
No, so we didn't, for that fact. And the other aspect is that we have a proposed use that generates less traffic than the former use, and we are a permitted use. So off-site impacts, although we looked at them, you know, I think we went far enough with what I think our analysis can show.
Extending that one point about the lower than existing. There was earlier testimony by Mr. Flack that the use here could go in anything that's allowed in the zone. So it may not necessarily be warehouse. It could be like light manufacturing. I'm not sure what the zoning allows for. But are you still comfortable that that would be less trips than the office use?
Absolutely, yes. It'll be higher than the 40 of a warehouse, probably in the order, from my experience, of 113, probably in the order of about 60 or 65 trips. So far less than the 200 that an office development of the existing building would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other members? Nope. All right, have you actually examined Hilton Court and have you concluded that it would function with some significant truck traffic going down it when you've got the effectively the almost the residential feel of the hotel across the way?
Yes, I've eaten in Chris Ruth's restaurant, but I've been on that site and you know, drove around and worked on that property, I'd say, many times. Is it going to change the character? Well, I would agree with you that a hotel is a quasi-residential, but is it really a residential? No.
It's a mixed
commercial.
use.
Yeah.
But
And, you know, we're talking at most 5 to 6 trucks an hour. That's one every 10 minutes, 12 to 10 minutes. So it's not going to be a heavy volume that would, I think, would detract from the positive nature of the surrounding properties.
Okay, I just, that road doesn't strike me as something that truck traffic would be, I can't say appropriate on, but it just doesn't seem to be a road that I would have expected to find truck traffic on, especially the possibility that it might end up being a 24-hour operation based on whoever the future tenant is. And I just wonder if you had any comments that...
From a traffic engineering, the roadway can easily handle it. From purposes of, let's say, impacts, whether it's visual or noise, I think Mr. Mcdonough would be able to handle that better, looking at what the negative criteria might be.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up question to that.
Sure.
Are you familiar with any signage along Hilton Court that prohibits stopping or standing in the event that the loading docks are full and you have these trucks piling up onto Hilton Court?
I don't know. I don't know if there are, but again, that's something that the township can control as well if it becomes a problematic.
In your opinion, is there any place on site where trucks could queue or?
Well, I think we have a couple of docks, not loading docks, but storage.
In case they're full?
He's here, or he's here, right? Yeah.
So you can use
We do have, trailer storage. I mean, tractor trailer could, although it's for purposes of storing a dropped trailer, you could easily fit a tractor trailer with a cab in there also. So we do have those locations, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing and seeing none. Counselor, well, one last thing. Any members of the public have any questions of this witness of this testimony? Hearing and seeing none.
Thank you very much.
Counselor?
Thank you, Joe. Last but not least, needs no introduction, John Mcdonough. John has, I think every big project I've ever done in Parsippany, John has planned it. So when it came to this project, even though this is a permitted use, I wanted John to participate because I wanted, this is an introduction of a new use onto the campus. So I wanted to have a local planner give his insight into planning issues. So here we go, John Mcdonough, you can swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony I'm about to give be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. John McDonough, MC, capital DONOUGH.
Now, Mr. McDonough has appeared before this board every month for the past many years. If the board could accept his qualifications, that would be great.
I don't know who he is. It's a Parsippany Hills night, huh?
I know, it's a parade.
I know.
Any questions on the qualifications of Mr. McDonough?
No.
Anybody still angry from that? No.
Now, John, you were one of the first professionals brought onto the team.
Yes.
And you've been working hand in hand with Franz and Joe and his partner and the architect from day one, correct?
We have.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Gamut.
since you, I'm going to let you talk about the campus, the introduction of this new use onto the campus, and all the planning rationales. So take it away.
I think the main reason Steve brought me here is because my pictures are from June. It was 0 degrees this week, and these pictures will make us remember that it actually is warm. Yes, Mr. Chairman, with your permission now.
A7.
Yes, A7.
Okay, this is John McDonough's planning.
And for the record, we entered a planning report. I don't know, Steve, did this get entered as an exhibit?
Yep.
I have it right here.
Because these are the same photos that are in the planning report. The only thing, I'm gonna get kicked out of here because it says I'm in the township of Hamilton. So, I know I'm not in Hamilton.
Which Hamilton? There's two.
Mercer?
It's okay.
Hamilton, New Jersey, huh?
Sorry about that, you're on Route 33.
Mercer, exactly.
The report's right.
Yeah, the
Okay, so,
report-
the purpose of this exhibit, A2, did you say?
This is A7.
A7 for the record, is to show that not only does this particular land use in this project marry up very well with the zone in terms of fully conforming with all the requirements of the SED 10 zone district. From a use standpoint, you heard about the permitted use, which does actually allow for a wide variety of land uses in this economic development district, but also 100% conforming with respect to the bulk controls, the building volume, the mass, the parking, the setbacks, the coverage, all fully conforming with your ordinance. So this is spot on with what the SED 10 zone wants to be. This is one of those economic development zones that actually do allow for industrial and warehousing type use, which is right on point with where our world has gone as we've moved from a world that you went out to a world that now comes to you. And this land use only continues to gain currency every single day. If you go by our Office of Emergency Management Services, Homeland Security, Center for Disease Controls, this is what's called critical infrastructure in terms of getting medicines and food and products out to people, and that's exactly what the warehouse land use does. We know that when there was the stay-at-home orders, just like our healthcare workers had to go out, so did our warehouse workers and our truck drivers as well. So there's a nexus in terms of essential there as well. The key point of these visuals here, I won't go through them one by one, is to show a great nexus with Route 10 and less than a mile away from exit 39 off of Interstate 287. So this is going to be able to take you right onto and off of the highway without having to go through the residential neighborhoods here in town. So we think this is a great location. Kudos to the planning board because this is the spot in the campus where this type of land use is allowed. Again, because of its great nexus with that regional highway network. Also, importantly here is we do have a site that has excellent carrying capacity. It's over 10 acres, so it can accommodate the mass and scale of what the applicant is proposing. And then finally, the fact that we do have a vacant office building here. These new buildings that are coming online, these warehouse buildings, we call them Class A. They will retain the look of an office use, so I think they'll be very complementary with the campus as well. Class A buildings attract Class A tenants, and that's what this campus wants to have here are the Class A tenants. So again, kudos to good planning and kudos to an applicant here who is stacking up 100% with what those planning goals are. I won't flip through the individual photos, but essentially, they are drone photos to show the beautiful landscape here, the beautiful campus, and how this is going to nestle within that campus, and not needing any relief whatsoever. And then, of course, the photos show the turnaround on Route 10 and easy on, easy off, getting back to the highway system. So with that, I will just say this is a really good application from a planning standpoint. I don't want to overtalk it here. I think it's a relatively light lift. The applicant has done a good job in advancing the purposes of zoning and the promotion of the general welfare, and no substantially negative impacts associated with this particular land use. The master plan is right on point with this and recognizes the struggling office market and the need to be flexible and transformative in terms of good planning. With that, I would say the statutory criteria for site plan approval are certainly met here, and approval is warranted.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any members of the board have questions of the planner? Mr. Napolitano?
Just out of curiosity, do you have a way to superimpose the actual artist rendition into your pictures? Is there a way to do that? I know you don't have it tonight, but is there a way to do that?
I'm sure architects can use SketchUp as a tool to drop it into a 3D.
Yeah, that'd be really, really helpful too for everyone to see what it really looks like when it's all finished. Thank you for these wonderful pictures.
Okay. Any members of the board at this time? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Weiser, do you have any?
I do not. It's a fully conforming application, so there's no variances, so there's no justifications for variances. So it's a by right application.
Okay. Any comments from our professionals or questions? Hearing and seeing none. Do we have any questions from any members of the board, or the public, I should say? Hearing and seeing none. Counselor?
Thank you very much. If I could just sum up briefly, again, it is nice seeing you all in person. The last couple of applications I had were looking at my computer screen, and I also have to say, it's really nice to come in here with a not apartment building, coming in with a commercial industrial use. One thing about this, it's kind of sad because of the existing building at 2 Hilton is a really pretty building. It's Class A. But unfortunately, as the town knows, it's not for want of trying to get a new tenant in there. It's just that market is gone. So this district in Parsippany is intended to generate economic activity. And it was kind of sad to see a lot of the buildings not generating economic activity. And yes, apartments are coming in elsewhere on the campus, but to see a commercial use remain on 2 Hilton, I'm happy about that. And working with Onyx, again, they bought up most of Matt Callai's assets on the campus. And to see them keeping the commercial, introducing industrial, bringing their investment in to maintain the vibrancy of the campus is, only good things in my book. And working with them, I guess it's been close to a year now. I mean, it takes a while to get from there to sitting right here. And it's been a terrific team. They care. I mean, when we said, you have to follow the ordinance, follow the plan, they did. They didn't come and ask for an 80-foot building. They didn't come and ask for, sometimes a developer will just try to get as much as they can get away with. They didn't. They came in and a 10-acre site, what fits, what's safe, what works. And believe me, they'll find tenants for this building. Tenant, hopefully, one. But the demand is there. They're doing a huge project down the street where Novartis is. They're turning that. They're doing industrial redevelopment there. It's huge. So this is coming. Again, although I did some apartment buildings, I'm happy to come in here with a commercial use. And we do hope the board appreciates, a year's worth of effort came in and was summarized in 2.5 hours, and we do appreciate the board's time. We appreciate all the review memos. We've been working with the board, former professionals, current professionals. We're going to comply with everything because that's who this applicant is. They're a great client, a good corporation to work with. And we do hope that you'll like the product because this is just one of the many things they have planned. And I hope it's a good introduction for Onyx to Parsippany, and hope this is just one of many great projects they're going to bring to the town.
Okay, so that's your case. Are there any members of the public who wish to come forward and speak either in opposition or in favor of this at this time? Hearing and seeing none. I guess we move to close the evidentiary portion of this case at this time. Are there any members of the board who would like to make comments on this case at this time before we go to asking for a resolution? All right, hearing and seeing none. Is there somebody who would like to move a resolution on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this project with whatever conditions our attorney has scribbled down through the meeting.
Mr. Attorney, would you please read back to the board what conditions you picked up in our discussions?
Of course, Mr. Chairman. The applicant requires the DEP permit LOI. The conditions set forth in the Highland Council report. Add a sidewalk to the Hilton Court roadway. Add 1 ADA space. Add the refuse container to the exterior of the building. Was it any specifics with that refuse location or to be determined?
To be determined.
Okay.
So they agree to work with our professionals on deciding where these things will be.
Correct. Create a wayfinding sign plan. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
The only other thing that I recall is just to resubmit all the plans correcting any discrepancies between the materials.
Oh, and Mr. DiPiero's comment about the restriction on this operator's turning, keeping their right-hand move, right turn out of the site.
Encouragement to use the Route 10 corridor and not Littleton Road.
Mr. Mcdonough, my engineer, correct me, it's not an LOI, it's not a letter of interpretation. What they're going to be obtaining is a flood hazard area verification and individual permit.
Thank you. It references LOI in the report. I apologize for that.
Thank you.
It's a flood hazard verification. Thank you.
Thank you.
And use Route 10 as corridor. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other comments on this resolution?
Are we also adding the condition to have one ADA parking as with the EV station in there?
Add one ADA parking space.
With EV access?
It was kind of twofold. Add one ADA parking space and add an EV charging station to the ADA space.
Thank you.
If not,
No, I, reading the new ordinance that I have yet even to use for any one applicant that's coming, I don't think there's any section in there that talks about how to regulate that I don't think has been addressed yet. We're still waiting to hear from that. So that would be, I wouldn't know yet what to enforce of what that space would need to be. So far, that has not been in any of the regulations because there's a particular spot where they're encouraging you to put those. They're not in the front where the entrance is, where you're normally ADA. So I think we're not at that step yet, my understanding is.
So you promised to work with our professionals in the zoning?
Yeah, I wouldn't make it mandatory because you'd have to come back if you couldn't meet it.
We'll use best efforts to provide EV opportunities for ADA accessible spaces. Now, we have our bank of EV spaces, which are not, ADA gets the pick of the litter, they get the best spots. But we'll do our best to provide at least one EV so ADA people are not denied.
Right. I don't want it to be a condition that the zoning officer, I have to force you to do something that's not feasible, and then we have to come back to remove it. Do you know what I mean?
So
I don't want to have to make it a mandatory condition, because I don't know that.
that's fair, yeah. We're going to ask that they work with the zoning officer and anybody else and the engineer perhaps, or just to determine if it's even feasible to create an ADA space that has access to an EV charger. We can also leave it so minor site modifications are dealt with professional staff as opposed to requiring the board approval.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to put these things in when you're building the site. It's harder to do it later, so.
Yes.
And again, in the spirit of equal accessibility for everyone, right? So.
Absolutely.
Those are the conditions, Mr. Chairman.
Those are the conditions. Do I hear, I'm assuming, Mr. Meth, that all of those conditions were inherent in your motion?
Yeah, except the EV one. No, I'm kidding. Yes, they are.
All right, do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, you win. All right, Nora, would you please call the roll?
Barbario.
Yes.
Didich.
Yes.
DiPiero.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Napolitano.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
Yes.
Dinsmore.
Thank you so much. Look forward to delivering some good product to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Nora, are there any other items that we need to deal with tonight?
No other
I'm
items.
supposed to remind the new members who haven't gone for education that they're going to have to go to education. At some point in time, Nora has the details. So for those of you, Gordon, going to a class on this, I think would be a little interesting. Who's teaching whom?
It's funny, I've actually taught that class, like I teach the engineer of that class for the last 15 years.
Are we taking something off the board?
Well, I suspect your past classes might qualify, but I don't know
No,
if they won't.
I gotta sit through, I gotta take the test.
You gotta take the test and sign,
Yeah. Motion to adjourn?
Did we have a motion
Okay.
to adjourn?
I hear a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, sit down.
Good night.
Walking out, shaking hands.